Hi, everyone. I'm Lynn Norton from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, the SADAG KZN coordinator. And I'm here with Joy, Laurie, and Sylvia from SOLO, Survivors of Loved Ones of Suicide. As it's World Suicide Prevention Day, we wanted to have a conversation about how to prevent suicide, how to support people who have been impacted by suicide. And so I'm going to hand you straight over to Joy, who is the founder of Solos, to tell us more about Solos and her experiences as a support group leader.
Okay, so we started the support group because of the high number of suicides in our country. And yeah, it's not obviously a group that anyone wants to attend, but it is helpful when they do attend. So I do think, people have benefited from the support group for sure. I'm not sure what other experiences you want me to elaborate on.
A leader for the last 10 years. Tell us a little bit more about your experiences.
Well, I think one of the most important experiences for me has been the fact that I also lost my partner to suicide 12 years ago. And via Joy's group, because then I went to her, I realized that there was really possibility for us to be able to share about this type of death, which is highly stigmatized. And I realized that after I did a bit of investigation and time went on, that I would like to take this forward as well and get involved via Joy with the group. And that is how we started the Durban group, and Joy then took on the Durban North group. So that is how that happened with me.
And thanks, Sylvia. You've also been with Solos for a long period. If you can just give us your insight onto the benefits, the challenges that you found.
Okay, certainly, along with Laurie, I joined her because not only also losing a friend to suicide, and in fact, in a couple of days' time, I had a friend who committed suicide last year on the 8th of September. And certainly I've found that not only from my own experiences of losing people to suicide, but also along with Laurie, that the group has certainly, I think the big thing that benefits, I think a lot of people, not only ourselves having experienced that, but the people, the group members, is that I think the first thing is you don't feel alone. And I think that's a big thing. And also just not being understood, because you get involved in this whole, not knowing, and nobody talks about it. So, and certainly over time, I think with discussing and collaborating, there's a lot of skills that one generates from this group, and each person adds to that body of knowledge and understanding and can go forward a lot easier. And so certainly that I feel is a lot of the big benefits. That, you create skills. There's a lot of trust, and also because we are very I think Laurie's also been very disciplined with that we don't share outside the group. So people feel supported and secure, because they do feel very vulnerable on many levels. So I think that's primarily from a benefits point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. And on another thing, people, mental illness sufferers always bear the brunt of stigma and being misunderstood. So then when suicide happens, the families take over that stigma, and they really find themselves totally isolated and they don't know who to speak to. So we create this group where there's understanding. We allow them to talk about the situation in a real non-judgmental way. So they might be able to say things that they can't even say to their families, because the whole group is there holding them. So it gives them the coping skills as well. It gives them a place of safety. And so those are very important things for people who feel so isolated and are trying to cope with this compounded and complicated grief.
Yeah. Thanks. And Joy, what do you think some of the challenges have been that you faced since you started the group, and what people can be aware of to look out for if they're wanting to support people during this kind of time?
Yeah, so I think the most challenging was someone who came because they had suicidal ideation, and it was a very negative person. And we actually had to, you could give him five positives and he would give you 10 negatives. So it was very challenging trying to help someone who actually didn't want to be helped, because, you know, for every positive, he had 2 negatives to throw back at you. But we actually did get him to the point where he realized that his family was the most important thing in his life, and that him being here and his family being in Johannesburg was what was actually the issue. And his daughter had a child, and he moved there, and his life was turned around. So, you know, sometimes you feel hopeless in that you're not making the progress with the people that you want, or seeing them make the progress, but you just have to persevere, because at the end of the day, perseverance is what actually helps to get them where they need to be.
And another challenge that we've had to face is the family dynamics. People come maybe in 2 and 3, and, you know, they all grieve in a different way. So maybe you've got the young daughter who grieves in a very open, and she says exactly what she thinks, and the mother can't really accept that, and maybe the father just can't even say a word, and they get frustrated with the dad because he actually cannot even open his mouth. He is in such pain. So in cases like that with Sylvia and I, then we sort of take the family out, and either Sylvia deals with that situation while we carry on with the group until we can get them to a place where they can really be part of the group as a whole. So that is one other challenge. I'm not sure if Sylvia can think of anything else right now.
No, I agree, because I think in that Laurie's brought up a very important point, because we all do articulate or lack articulation around such these things with stigma, or just dealing with that grief, that void, that such a difficult thing, even sometimes for ourselves as group supporters and leaders, because sometimes it's just holding that space and just being compassionate for them to feel comfortable enough. But certainly, as Laurie says, you know, we've had the one time where the wife was literally verbalizing and seeking help and everything, but her husband hadn't said an absolute word, you know. So there's very many different dynamics, and I think it's really being sensitive about that. And it's worked very well, certainly in tandem with Laurie, and haven't had all that much experience with you, Joyce. Sorry, Angel. But it's like being able to separate that, because it becomes a difficulty. I mean, we have even now we're all 3 survivors, you know, are each trying to express themselves, and one actually taking the burden of the other 2 and trying to deal with it themselves, you know. So it's really hard. And as Joyce says, it's taking time out as group leaders, and this is like looking after yourself as meditating, or being able to regenerate yourself, because it is a long and sometimes arduous and difficult process to manage oneself, as well. Thanks, Joy.
Yeah, so self-care seems really important. So if you were going to give advice to someone who was wanting to start a group, or even just to anyone in the public who wants to support someone, where they know someone who has suicidal ideation or has lost someone to suicide, what kind of advice can you give or share to how can people help on this World Suicide Prevention Day?
Talk about it as much as you can to as many people as you can, so that you know, people are not afraid to talk about it. I mean, I can go into any place and I can end up talking about suicide. It doesn't matter whether it's a work thing or a social thing. You know what, if you bring up the topic, you'd be amazed how many people actually want to talk about it, but you have to open that door.
And another very important thing is to listen. Especially with someone who has lost someone to suicide, is just stay there, hold them and listen, because they might have guilt feelings, they might be blaming someone else, they might themselves feel suicidal because the pain is so huge to cope with, that you've got to be sensitive enough and acute enough to understand that if there is that problem, you tell them, look, it's okay to feel like this, but you might need therapy, you might need to see a psychologist, you might need to go on medication for a while, because this is a very difficult death to cope with. So it's really listening and not judging. and not giving your viewpoint as to how this person must deal with it, because it's their journey. It's that road less traveled, which takes you one step forward and 500 back. And then suddenly within a few years, there's a turning point, and that gray color that you've been, surrounded with suddenly becomes, you see color again. So those are important things for us to remember as group leaders, that you're really there to listen and to hold and to ensure that the other members do the same thing.
Thanks, Laurie. And you, Sylvia?
I think this is the difficulty. And I mean, I've just recently been doing I think for somebody else on depression, and also that correlation, because when one has something physical, everybody knows about a lot of things. So if you talk about cancer, diabetes, whatever, we all got an idea, and people empathize, and it's open. You don't have to worry. So say, oh well, I've got cancer. Oh gosh, and what are you doing? And so it already opens a debate. The moment we're talking about mental health or whatever, all these barriers start coming up straight away. People like, because they don't engage, and that's where I'm very admire, like with Joy, it's literally just being able just to say, so what do you know about suicide? So and I think we need to be bold enough to just tell it like it is and open that debate to challenge people's knowledge, because I think this is the big thing for suicide this year, is let us create a bigger platform of engagement about frankness and authenticity around suicide and its ramifications, because it's not an easy subject by any means, but we really need to have this, or like a summit or something, you know what I'm saying? We really need to make a big impression, and because we are all restricted from that point, to create dialogue, big time. I think that's really necessary, and it's a point of departure which we can then start going outwards, I think. Thanks.
With the theme of action, it kind of fits that what you're all saying is to open the door, start the conversation, start talking, but always listen at the same time, hold on to people, tell them it's okay to feel as they're feeling. Are there any last messages that you want to share?
For me, it's that people who have lost loved ones to suicide should know that they are not alone. There is a group that is available to them. SADAG has got counselors that can help them, so they can feel that if they really are not able to speak out, there's always our Solos group, which is only in Durban at the moment, but we are there to reach out to people. Thank you.
No, I just agree with Laurie. I think it's very important to know that there is help out there. Either with our Solos group, which is often that we have a lot of information and collaborated with SADAG of South Africa and KZN particularly. So they are, we are accessible along with Facebook, Instagram. So it's also letting people know that where they can reach us, phone numbers, media contacts, etc. So it's accessible when they need that, and that it is like supporting them. That we're here to support.
Hi, my name is Rina. I lost my son Aniel to suicide on the 12th of March 2019. The pain is like no other. Whilst my family and I are together in this grief, there is a need for an outside support group. People who have been through the same or similar road, only they can understand. This need has been filled by this support group. I rely on this group for understanding and courage to go forward. When the need is overwhelming, I turn to this group. I cannot say enough about how the people in this group have and are helping me with words of encouragement and motivational messages, audios and videos. I don't know how I would cope without the support of this group. I thank Laurie and all in the group for their continued support.